On Saturday, April 23rd of this year, I will be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for Better Discourse 4. See me and other creators like Blair White, Stephen Destiny Bonnell, James Lindsay, Libby Evans, Carrie Smith, Lisa Reynolds, Nikki Klein, Sean Fitzgerald, and Taba'a. Get your tickets, betterdiscourseevent.com. You know, one of the things that bothers me right here on theinternet.com is this desire people have to avoid admitting that they're wrong. Now, granted, I've never had to do this because I've never actually ever been wrong, so I can't really empathize with that feeling because I'm always correct, and even if I was wrong, I'd never admit it, but I sure cannot stand when people know for a fact that they're wrong and they just never acknowledge that. And if you haven't heard what this is all based on, what this is all tying into, is the CDC is basically announcing that they're going to remove a bunch of the COVID restrictions that they had in place because a lot of them weren't backed up by our holy science. I know we're supposed to trust the science, we're supposed to believe the science, but every time the left is wrong about the science changes. And even when it changes to a position held by the right wing, don't worry, they're still not scientific, they're just evil and bad, and honestly, they don't trust the science, even though things seem to be aligning with what they said. But before we get into this, before we talk about shielding yourself from the virus, we need to talk about virtually shielding yourself from online viruses. Wow, what a great transition. Let me just give the asterisk that Virtual Shield does not prevent the transmission of coronavirus. The US government has been warning about cyber attacks for years, and some of the largest cyber attacks in our history have been tied to the Russians. Now more than ever, your personal data is vulnerable to these hackers. This is one of the reasons why I have partnered with Virtual Shield. Protect yourself from these hackers, and if you sign up for Virtual Shield at virtualshield.com/justice, you can get 50% off your lifetime subscription. Also, you got that thing if you like streaming in other countries where you could change your location, virtualshield.com/justice. Yes, I lit the Fauci candle in the break and I forgot to get footage of it. Don't get mad at me because you didn't get to see me light it. Just calm down. Now, for years, we have been at the mercy of this 14 days to flatten the curve. For almost 2 years, actually, we have been flattening that curve for 14 days, and it has been uncouth, it has been unpopular to question anybody like the great and honorable Lord Anthony Tony Fauci, or anyone who says, hey, it's kind of been way more than 14 days to flatten the curve. It seems like you're just trying to implement all these restrictions in order to gain more and more power, and it seems like a lot of these restrictions don't actually work. In fact, Ron DeSantis was criticized for taking the position that the CDC is set to announce in like a day, if they haven't already announced it by the time this video comes out, in a recent video when he was talking to people standing behind him wearing the mask.
You do not have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not doing anything, and we got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous.
Now, the criticism, which I'm going to be highlighting one in particular from Chris Hayes' Twitter, was all about how Republicans are such liars and hypocrites because they talk about free choice and all that, but they will take it away as soon as they're in power, just in the same way that Ron DeSantis did in that clip that you definitely saw. Quote, "Incredible, predictable, how conservative ideology goes from, hey, it should be my choice, don't tell me what to do, to we are absolutely going to tell you what to do once we have the power to do it." Now, Chris Hayes must have had something in his ears, and maybe he didn't have his MSNBC patented problem glasses on because this thing was actually subtitled, because in that very video, Ron DeSantis said, if you want to wear it, it's fine, and the video's only 17 seconds, so my question is, what is wrong with Chris Hayes, and why does he equate Ron DeSantis saying, you can wear it, it's fine, it's your choice, to removing a choice?
You do not have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not doing anything, and we got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous. If you want to wear it, fine. If you want to wear it, fine.
Now, of course, we know why, because the left believes that if they find something or they determine something to be good, honorable, and noble, then that thing must be forced upon the people, because otherwise your inaction is actually some form of violence. And you can see this in their slogans. Silence is violence. If you don't speak up, then you're a bad person. Yes, I didn't know a second slogan, and I don't know why I set up for it, but you get the picture. This is their worldview about everything. You either adopt their policies by force, or you garbage. Perfect example of this is the way that they feel about healthcare. They don't want to have a government plan or a public option. This was the big dispute among the progressives, because a public option wouldn't consume everyone, and if you have some kind of choice, there's a chance that you could make the wrong choice. Therefore, they need to correct that notion for you and make sure you make the proper choice. And all this also applies with mask mandates, whether that be in schools or vaccine mandates or any of those things. Now, in some instances, it is unfortunate when a left-winger actually has to give you the illusion of choice, but as you can see with the vaccine mandates in particular, what they do is they consistently punish you for not complying in order to compel you to comply, because they don't have the government authority to force you to comply. This is why you have the restaurant mandates. This is why you have all these different instances of them trying to get people fired from their job, increase their health insurance premiums, all the different democratic policy proposals that were basically intended to force you into compliance with the vaccine mandate, all because they believed that the vaccine mandate was good, but that went far beyond my belief that vaccines are generally good, and that they believe that they should force it upon you because it's good for you, and if you don't like it, congratulations, you don't know what's good for you, and none of your choices should be respected. Now, the culmination of this, by the way, has been in articles and all this, where the left has discovered that a lot of the things that they advocated for weren't very good, and to be fair, I do think the Canadian trucker convoy had something to do with this. They kind of changed the climate around this topic, even though people had been feeling this way for a long time, with this SNL skit, where they basically have left-wingers at a dinner talking about, and they're afraid the whole time to talk about, what people on the right have known this whole time, that a lot of this stuff is theater, and it is in fact ridiculous.
Oh, but Keith, you know you can take your mask off at the table.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm wearing it half the time.
Well, I heard the CDC is going to lift all mask mandates soon.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's so weird. It's like COVID's not over, but it's just going to stop. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, that reminds me of this article I read.
Honey, no one wants to hear about that.
Well, it was in Bloomberg, and I thought it was interesting.
What article?
It was just saying how mask mandates had, I don't know, little to no effect on COVID.
Now, don't get me wrong, I love comedy. I love jokes. I love humor. I've done videos on this channel about how people trying to cancel comedians are ridiculous, and honestly, I do appreciate SNL now, at this point, mocking the crazies on the left for their COVID hysteria. However, the mask mandates are still in place in a lot of places. I just flew to CPAC. Guess what? You still gotta wear the mask on the plane, even though the science has changed. I know it makes a lot of people on the left uncomfortable. The science has supposedly changed, and we have determined that maybe this didn't really do a lot of things. By the way, I have to be cautious in my language, because even though the Bloomberg article that she referenced, I can pull up and put on screen, I'm worried that YouTube, which by the way, they did label this comedy sketch, will actually take action against me for pointing out the basics of what was said in the article, and how we should have expected this whole time for the data on this to change, and how a lot of this was guesswork from the jump. And that's really the issue I have, because remember, this wasn't an instance of people disagreeing about the efficacy of masks in an open public forum. This was an instance of the left in terms of the government and in terms of the social media arms, which left-wing politicians were putting pressure on, censoring anybody who spoke any kind of sense and who talked about what ultimately ended up looking like the actual conclusion about the efficacy of masks, as long as they were on the wrong side of the political spectrum. So SNL can do this, and it's laugh out loud, funny, hilarious now. Look at all these lefties who are all upset about these mandates and how they bought into it and how they don't want to admit it, even though the CDC is basically admitting it and Bloomberg is admitting it because, you know, whatever, but they did ban people from this. They took away people's livelihoods.
For instance, while I am so personally relieved that I'm vaccinated,
Careful.
I sometimes wonder if other people who are hesitant, careful, might not have like a valid,
What?
not valid, but but understandable.
Not tonight.
Help me.
The left supremacist attitude, their idea that everything that they're in favor for should be enforced, extended to censoring people who disagreed with their narrative. So laugh out loud, people at SNL, mock those lefties, but in reality, these aren't people that are just uncomfortable. These are all authoritarians. They're all bad people, or a large portion of them are bad people, because they wanted to sacrifice First Amendment principles, not just in the government, but in private lives, the idea, the culture of free speech, all on the altar of, we can't let this misinformation spread, even if this misinformation actually turns out to be the correct information.
I just think that if people are actually losing their jobs...
Oh, no.
Careful, girl.
Look, vaccines save lives. Fact. Okay, they stop the hospitals from being overrun. Fact.
Where are you up to?
But did I have to dump my oldest friend just because he didn't get
No, 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 no,
a
no, no.
booster?
So they say that comedy works because of the underlying truth behind it. And honestly, right here, you know for a fact that this is legitimately how the left reacts to anybody who has any criticism at all of policy surrounding the vaccine, not the vaccine itself, because a lot of us aren't doctors. So I understand the skepticism of random internet people telling you about this or that related to the vaccine, but around the policy, they're like, oh no, they re at you literally like Keenan did right there. And this is generally, again, what we see. That being said, remember, people did lose their jobs over this. It was policy of the federal government to try to force people out of work if they didn't comply with Joe Biden's will. They tried the same thing and they implemented the same thing in a lot of schools, even though kids are not particularly vulnerable to the virus. Something like 600 nationwide died from it. They were trying to force this upon children. And in fact, even though Joe Biden and his administration were 100% crafting policy that followed the science, they weren't science deniers like the Republicans, and their political agencies like the FDA, the CDC, and the NIH have nothing to do with politics. He very notably bought the vaccine for children about 6 weeks prior to it actually being approved for children, which I'm sure, even though coincidentally he was definitely just following the science, there was no pressure on anybody in the government to give it the green light after he spent hundreds of billions of dollars on these doses for children. Totally on the up and up. Any concern about that is honestly horrible. You're a bad person. Get your 4-year-old the shot today, because Biden is following the science in the way that linear time kind of works backwards sometimes.
Well, at least we have the CDC. I mean, they haven't always been perfect, but the science changed.
How does science change? When I make a mistake at work, I don't get to say the science changed.
At least we had outdoor dining.
Oh, you mean when they built a smaller restaurant in the street? How is that outdoors?
Oh my god.
Now, overall, even though this segment is kind of obnoxious when you think about the fact that people were getting banned for stating these positions, even joking about the absurdities of COVID just a month ago, and in fact, people are probably still getting banned and restricted for doing so, I do recommend this sketch because they mock the idea of outdoor dining, which, by the way, we still have in New York, because what they ultimately ended up doing was building a smaller restaurant on the street and then just having you dine inside, but instead of on the restaurant floor, your floor was the street. Among other ridiculous absurdities, like having people wear masks during athletic events, but not during pizza parties and other things that happen after the athletic events. It doesn't make any sense at all. These people haven't been following their own regulations the whole time, and they've been lecturing us, restricting our freedoms, getting you fired from your job, all based on this hysteria that they whipped up that now all of a sudden they're discovering may have been a little bit ridiculous. Look, I think it's very important that we take big lessons from this. We need to understand that the Constitution is not invalid during the course of an emergency. After 9/11, we gave up a bunch of our freedoms in order to fight terrorism, and we learned years later how bad of a mistake that was. Hopefully, the response to the virus can trigger that memory a little bit quicker, and we can learn that never again, that the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, are not null and void when there's a virus around, and this has all been nonsensical. It's all been for naught. Unfortunately and sadly, even though we did all these things to our economy, we destroyed our society, we created enemies of our neighbors, if you look at some of the pretty bad estimates in terms of fatalities in the United States of America from the outset, not the insane estimates, but the higher end of the more reasonable estimates, we're right about there. If you look at the states in the order of fatalities, they're basically in the order of population, and this is despite the states being laboratories of innovation and trying different things. It's unfortunate what happened to this nation, but the lesson that we need to take away, the lesson that we need to learn, is that the government is not our friend in any situation. That giving up power to them is something that you're going to have to fight and claw for in order to get back. That we could have been, if we had the wrong regime in power at the top, a nation more similar to Australia, rather than having some states that were crazy versus some states that try to have business as usual. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, you can show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social media. Support me via the support links in the description box. This has been me talking about the left, finally realizing that some of their ridiculous restrictions were in fact ridiculous. Till next time.